All right, we are live. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. We are going to be breaking down the October World Cup qualifying roster today. Make sure to send in your comments, your feedback, everything. We want to hear it. So if you don't know me, I'm Jake. FIFA America is the channel. We talk everything USMNT, play some FIFA. We do everything around here. Ryan is from the podcast as well, one of our co-hosts, and he runs the Twitter handle Deutsche Yank. He's the man on the ground for everything in Germany. So yeah, we're gonna tag team this. We're gonna power through it and really just start off with our general thoughts. Then we're gonna break down each of the positions, and then we're gonna just kind of wrap everything up, give our general thoughts. There's a lot to talk about here. I think the initial pieces, right, are the missing people on this list, your pool of six, your Reynas, and we're going to get into some people who we think were snubbed as well. But Ryan, maybe just start off with your general thoughts on the roster. There's 27 names, not the 30 that we thought we could see, and there's some surprises in here. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it that the biggest glaring mistake for me is actually just the lack of a 30-man roster. It's pretty disappointing to see. We've been harping on it for a while. So that was something that I was really looking forward to. I was hoping Gregg would have learned from the last cycle, but we move forward and it is what it is at this point. But overall, from the roster, we went over it in our most recent pod of kind of what our expectations were and then what we thought Gregg was going to do. And to be honest, I think it's pretty close to what we thought Gregg was going to do. There's not too many surprises of inclusions on here. Kind of as you pointed to earlier, it's the exclusions that really stand out to me. And I think we'll touch more on who we thought should have been there. And again, if we just extend this roster out to 30 players that I think should be there for the window, just so we can help get them integrated.
Yeah, for sure. I have some notes written down that I definitely want to touch on before we get to everything else. But like you said, he brought 27 players. Even if you count Pulisic and Reyna as players that could potentially join the group midway through, that gets you to 29. So you have teams that are in World Cup qualifying calling in 50 plus players for these games. Yeah. So there's no reason that the only rule, guys, is that you need to register your 23-man roster 24 hours before your next game. It doesn't need to be any of the same players that played the previous game. And there's no hard and fast rules around how many goalkeepers you can bring, anything like that. So to bring 27 players again is almost like it's just a lack of being able to bring players in that you want to get experience. So we're going to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room, I think, for me at least, is Joe Scally. And then to say in some of the post, I guess, not post-game press conference, but press conference after releasing the roster, he talked about Joe Scally not having experience. Well, how are you going to get experience if you're not called into the roster? That is pretty circular logic to me.
Yeah, it didn't make sense at all, especially when he's talking about younger players or kind of attributing him not being called in due to his age. George Bello's on this roster. Yeah. I mean, I get it that he was there for all of CONCACAF and he's got more experience in Gregg's system, but this guy's been starting every single game for Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga and in their Pokal matches. It just doesn't make sense at all. Joe Scally's got to be one of the biggest exclusions. I think there's a couple of them that we'll touch on later. Definitely. But yeah, as you were saying, it's just it has zero logic behind not calling him in, especially considering some of the other younger players that are in this roster.
Yeah. So guys, I'm going to try and DJ this. I'm looking over at the comments. I'll make sure to put them up on the screen and talk through any of the questions that you guys have. So again, just one note for this is that it is possible that Pulisic and Reyna, one or both of them, join the group midway through, maybe after the Panama match, since Pulisic is based in the UK and won't be allowed in Panama. So this roster could even change from what we're seeing at the moment. But American Tough said Gregg has 100% lost his damn mind if he ever had one. ABC said it isn't actually that bad. So even within the fan base, there seems to be, a lot of people on different sides of this. So maybe let's just dive into it. The goalkeepers are Sean Johnson, Zach Steffen, and Matt Turner. The obvious name that isn't in this group is Ethan Horvath. What do you think's going on with Ethan? Was it the right decision to bring in Sean Johnson as the third goalkeeper?
So logically, you can see anticipating players being unable to go to Panama why the selection would be the way it is. I know Gregg touched on it as well too in his press conference that he gave. I think he attributed not bringing Horvath in due to the lack of minutes and then trying to get him kind of more secure in with his club team. I would agree he probably wouldn't be starting any of these games, even though I have all the faith in the world in Horvath. So I can see Gregg's logic here. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but I can see where he's coming from. Sean Johnson's been around the camp before. He's kind of that just vanilla player that you know what you're going to get, nothing too exciting. And realistically, I don't expect him to see him get any minutes in this window anyway. It wouldn't shock me at all if we see 180 out of Matt Turner again, 270 out of Matt Turner again.
There seems to be a lot of those vanilla players on this roster for me. It's kind of like the constants where you know what you're going to get. There's not a ton of risk from bringing them on, but they don't really add flavor to what you're doing. And
there's a little spice in there though.
Yeah, a little bit for sure. But
yeah,
I'm looking
German
at names
spice.
like, well, maybe not
spicy.
the German American that you wanted to see.
I'm sure we'll get to that.
One of the notes that I've written down for Horvath is that it just makes sense to me. And that's kind of a theme throughout this roster is even when I don't agree, I think there is maybe a Gregg logic that you can kind of follow the dots of what he's thinking. And here, Ethan Horvath is fighting for a spot at Nottingham Forest. He won't be allowed in Panama, so to have Sean Johnson on the roster, it automatically gives us two options to bring into the Panama game. And yeah, maybe Matt Turner gets 270, but I actually think Zach Steffen starts at least one of these games. But unless something catastrophic happens, Sean Johnson is not seeing the field, and he's going to be one for the locker room. And we know Gregg loves those guys. But one thing we talked about in the pod was who that third or fourth goalkeeper would be after Horvath. And something that just continues to strike me and doesn't feel perfect around that logic is that even in MLS, Sean Johnson is not putting up the same numbers that Bill Hamid or Tim Melia or any of those other maybe lesser talked about American goalkeepers are. So for me, looking at the numbers, doing a deep dive into that, it just kind of, again, reinforces the fact that Sean Johnson is one of Gregg's guys. And that's why he's on this list, because he's very comfortable to have on the roster. But anything else that sticks out to your goal for goalkeepers, or should we move to defenders?
Yeah, no, I think we kind of got what we expected from goalkeepers. I like the idea of Zach probably getting 90 at least in there. So yeah, I think that's what we expected. So we can go ahead and move on to defenders at this point.
Cool. All right, so defenders are George Bello, John Brooks, Serginho Dest, Mark McKenzie, Shaq Moore, Tim Ream, Chris Richards. I'll say that again. Chris Richards is in this roster. Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, and DeAndre Yedlin. Just give me your quick, who are one or two people that surprised you making this roster?
Well, I think the biggest name of note for everybody that's going to be kind of shocked is Shaq Moore, considering that he hasn't been getting regular minutes with his club. But I will say that every time Shaq Moore has been called into the national team, he's played well. I had the luxury of seeing the U.S. play France before the 2018 World Cup, and I distinctly remember Shaq Moore starting in that game. And that's the France team that went on to go win the World Cup, and he definitely played a really good game there. So I know a lot of people are discounting Shaq Moore's ability, but from seeing him play live a couple of times now, I've been pretty impressed with him as a player, but he's definitely one of the ones that's going to get the most noise. For me, the one that I am kind of disappointed to see is George Bello. Nothing against him. I know he played really well in the Gold Cup, especially in the final, but I've seen a couple of games with him with Atlanta, and and it's okay, but he just shows his immaturity from time to time. And when it comes to World Cup qualifying, that's something you can't have. If he is going to start that game in Panama, since maybe Robinson can't be there, I don't know that having somebody that could potentially be a bit of a liability in the left back position there, is something you want to go with. So it wouldn't shock me actually to see Dest on the left side, but Joe Scally's shown that he can play both sides, and he's played really well for Mönchengladbach on the left-hand side. And I think in a game like that, where if he only comes in and plays 90 minutes and just plays in the Panama game, has one specific role of, hey, don't get sucked up, don't get beat on the counter, be defensively stout. That's something that's in Joe Scally's locker room today. So to not call him in, that's the one that hurts the most. And then one of Gregg's guys is going to be Tim Ream. I know a lot of people aren't the biggest Tim Ream's fans.
I don't mind it.
I don't mind it either. I mean, he's the senior statesman. If you want to go with somebody that's more of a constant, it's going to be Tim Ream. But if you want somebody that's more exciting and playing in, I guess you could call it, definitely a higher league in La Liga, it's Matt Miazga that's missing from that. Again, Matt Miazga gets called in if we have a 30-man roster or even 30 plus. You're probably going to hear that a few more times throughout this podcast because I think it's what everybody wants to see. But those are the main takeaways for me. Even too, Yedlin didn't look great in the last window, so I could potentially even see bringing in Scally over Yedlin. We've got Ream in the defensive locker room and John Brooks that are both kind of your senior statesmen. So I think we have enough guys there that bring that, that mentality of having been here before and can coach the younger guys through the experience that we need to start kind of prepping for 2022. And if Scally continues to improve the way he is by 2022, that he's definitely on the plane going to Qatar. So
that's what doesn't make any sense to me is that if you replace Joe Scally's name with George Bello, Shaq Moore, DeAndre Yedlin, even Tim Ream, I'm not complaining about any of that. And then to add on top of that you have at least 3 extra roster spots, potentially more, and you're still not bringing him. And he's had just as much, if not more, playing time, getting good marks, and has solidified his starting spot in the Bundesliga, where Chris Richards is also playing and starting for Hoffenheim, probably at the same level as Borussia Mönchengladbach at this point. That is really just a head scratcher to me. So Lance, you asked, is it possible for Scally to join as well once Gregg figured out his mistake? I don't think so. I think Pulisic and Reyna are different situations than Joe Scally. I think Joe Scally has specifically been left off this roster. And when he was asked about Scally or other players that missed out, Gregg did talk about COVID, injuries, fighting for your place. So he mentioned Matt Miazga in that as well. I'm not super surprised that Matt Miazga is not on this list because I think at the moment he is playing at a high level in a very good league, but he's been good for 2 or 3 games. So I think if he starts to up that to being good in 5 or 6 or 7 consecutive good games, then he starts to maybe be more important to this team than someone like Tim Ream. But yeah, the fact that Joe Scally's not on this list, no matter if it's for someone else that was called in or just as an extra, that to me is just inescapable. He can play right back and left back, like Ryan mentioned. He is a very safe option, even though he's so young. And this is the time to get him experience, or at least get him into the group. So it's really tough to look at that and not think that that's the one where I can't put the dots together, where I can't piece the logic together.
Yeah, and Gregg tried hard in the press conference to kind of punt the question and work his way around it, but I think he kind of missed the mark on that one. There's just no logical explanation for why he's been left out.
Yeah, absolutely. And just logically, Shaq Moore, you mentioned as the weird name on that. Shaq Moore is playing in the 2nd division in Spain, not getting many minutes, not putting up great performances. And Joe Scally is playing in the Bundesliga, starting every game, playing 90. There's not enough facts in the world that can make me understand why Joe Scally is not on this list and someone like Shaq Moore is. And that's not a diss to Shaq Moore. I agree with you, Ryan. He has played very well every time he's been in a US jersey. But if you're going on form, then Joe Scally's on this list. If you're going on who plays in a better league, Joe Scally's on this list. If you go through 10 different things, then Joe Scally's on this list. So I don't want to belabor the point, but anyone else in defenders that we need to talk about?
No, I think that's pretty clear cut. I think
Cool.
that just the one thing we've learned from this is that Gregg is going to live and die by his guys. And, you know, he's been given a lot of rope as the coach of this team. And throughout the last couple of years of, you know, he's got to implement his program, his style of play, and find his players. To be at this late stage in the game and see him continuing to make this mistake really concerns me come 2022.
Yeah. Felix Santos, you said the Scally exclusion doesn't bother me much. He's only played 11 first division games. Let's give him some time before we start leaning on him. I see your point, but I don't think we're arguing the same point. And what I mean by that is that I don't expect him to be the answer for our team or expect him to be the answer for the defense. I don't think the US has to lean on him for performances. And it's more just, why isn't he in camp getting repetitions with this team? He's not in the same space for, say, like Ethan Horvath trying to fight for his place at Nottingham Forest. He's pretty much solidified his spot as the right or left back for Gladbach in the Bundesliga. So I don't disagree with you. I wouldn't lean on someone that only has 11 professional games under their belt to be starting every game and to be putting in performances week in and week out. I just think he's ready to do that. And because we don't have to put that pressure on him, this is a good time to start getting him integrated into the group. Jose, you said Stefan is the best goalkeeper for the US. If he went back to the MLS, he'd be the best keeper there. Yeah, I mean, when he was playing for Columbus Crew before he left for Man City, he was easily one of the top 3 goalkeepers in the league. And hopefully, you know, especially for goalkeepers, you can always argue game time is more important than practicing with one of the best teams in the world. But if you say he's practicing with Man City and Pep Guardiola versus playing for the Columbus Crew, then maybe we can have a discussion and an argument there. So Ryan, while I'm going through some of the more of these comments, why don't we move to midfielders? We have Kellen Costa, Tyler Adams, Gianluca Busio, Luca De La Torre, who a lot of people were calling for before this roster came out, Sebastian Lletget, one of Gregg's guys, Weston McKennie, who was just subbed in for Juventus. They just beat Chelsea in the Champions League. Yunus Musa makes a return to the US roster, which I'm extremely excited about. And a name we all know and love to hate, Christian Roldan, is also on this list. So Ryan, give me your thoughts while I look through some of these comments and make sure we're talking with everyone.
I know. First of all, I just want to say I feel like we're really missing Tom. Tom really rounds us out really well, and so I know he's got a busy week with school. But Tom, if you get a chance to listen to this, just know we miss you, buddy. Hope school's going well. As far as the selection goes, I think one of the things that we should be really excited about is there was the injury scare to Tyler Adams missing some time recently. So to see him back and getting some minutes with Leipzig, that's really exciting. For me, he should be wearing the armband every single game. So definitely really happy to have him in there. A lot of guys we expected to see, but the inclusion of Busio, I think, is really exciting. And that's the thing that kills me about Gregg is he does show some flexibility. He does show times when he's willing to learn and bring in some new people. So when there's other players that I feel like really should be on this roster, it definitely hurts to see. I think we can definitely. I think we're all hoping to see that midfield of Adams, McKennie, and Musa. If we can see that at a point in time during this window, that would be really exciting because I think that gives us a clear advantage against most teams in CONCACAF in the middle of the field, if not all. De La Torre, the exciting inclusion. We talked about him during the last pod as well. He's one of those guys that can definitely help move the ball from defense and transition it into the offensive half of the field. So even seeing a midfield of Adams, McKennie, De La Torre, or Adams, Musa, De La Torre, even McKennie, De La Torre, and Musa, like I think that gives us a lot of flexibility in there. We've come to the conclusion to know that Lletget and Roldan are just kind of Gregg's boys. The good thing I like about it is a lot of times he doesn't lean on them as starters. In the last window he didn't, but they were definitely some of the first players off the bench. So I think that's something that we can expect to see.
To their credit, they also kind of saved us in the Honduras game.
For
when
sure.
the MLS guys came on, the game changed and we handily beat Honduras once they came on the field.
So the players changed, but also the formation changed. That was really important as
Absolutely.
well. So yeah, Gregg definitely made the right choices there. So even given the players that we're bringing into this window, the only person for me that is, kind of a bummer, but understandable because he's still injured. I'd love to see Reyna in there and Reyna playing in the middle. To have even just the idea of Adams, Reyna, and someone like De La Torre or Gianluca Busio, like those are two guys playing in those 8 possessions that can really progress the ball forward.
Yeah.
Versus McKennie and Musa, I see those guys as people that can dribble past players to create disadvantages compared to De La Torre and Reyna are players that can unlock a defense with their passing. So overall, there's no one that really stands out to me that I'm really disappointed we don't have in there in the midfield. I still think the expectation should be at least 7, if not 9 points out of this window.
Yeah, absolutely. And
is there anybody in your mind though that you can think of that you feel like really sticks out as a snub? Or I mean, the big surprise obviously is De La Torre, but who is there a snub in this midfield right now?
Julian Green, dude.
I've come to the conclusion that it's going to take a miracle for Gregg to call him in. I don't know what else Julian Green can really be doing at this point to get himself called in.
I'll say this from someone that doesn't live in Germany but watches the Bundesliga and supports all of the Americans everywhere in Europe and MLS. Julian Green hasn't put up incredible numbers in the Bundesliga. He's played well, but he's playing for a relegation team in the Bundesliga. He's not scoring. He's not really assisting. Like I don't disagree that he was snubbed or that he can bring something to this team. But in my mind, he's not making like open and shut case for him to be brought into a camp, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I if he could at least play well,
but feel free to completely throw that out the window.
No, I would definitely agree with you. I think that it's going to be hard for anybody at Greuther to actually, put up many stats of goals and assists this year. So you try to look at the little things that he does of, taking set pieces for them. He's a leader in the squad. He's definitely a player that can turn on somebody and he kind of plays the same type of game as Luca De La Torre. I don't think that either of them are phenomenal athletes, but they read the game well and they can make the right pass to unlock a defense.
Yeah.
And then
I was more just playing devil's advocate there to kind of follow the logic of maybe what Gregg is thinking. He just needs to see more. But I'll also say this. One of the notes that I put is if you look at who is a 6 and who is an 8 and who is a 10 in this group, there's no attacking midfielders. Christian Roldan plays a 10 for Seattle, but he doesn't really play that for the US, and he's been employed on the wings recently. But you have players like Julian Green, Georgi Mihalovic, Caden Clark, Joel Senora, Paxton Pomykal, Richie Ledesma. All of those names are players that are attacking midfielders. Gregg just completely refuses to play with any midfielder that is specifically in the last third of the field, just taking up that space or making forward runs or passes. Luca De La Torre and Yunus Musa are 8s who can transition the ball from defense to offense, but there's no player that's picking up the ball in the final third and making that final pass. Those players to me are the only one on this roster is really Brendan Aronson, but he's going to play on the wing as well. So that's really like the biggest takeaway for me is Julian Green just plays the wrong position. And unless he has 15 goal contributions by the end of the year, like I don't think Gregg is going to call him in because he's not going to use that position.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that we'll see Brendan Aronson. I mean, similar to how he played for Salzburg tonight, he can play that role. We saw Gregg try him out there in the first game of the last window. So I definitely think he's the only player that you kind of pointed out that can play that role. But if we kind of go off on a bit of a tangent here for a second,
Go
so are
for it.
you seeing with the amount of with the amount of defenders that we have, are we going to see something like a 3-5-2, 4-3-3? Because if we do 4-3-3, Gregg's shown that he's not going to play anybody really as a 10. He wants those 2 8s that are kind of playing off each other. And then if we do 5-3-2 or kind of a 3-5-2, those midfielders in the middle typically aren't going to be anybody that progresses the ball forward as a number 10. So
if you play that,
I think we can see what Gregg kind of wants to do already.
Yeah, but if you play that way, if you play a 5 in the back or a 3 at the back, whatever you want to call it, you need to make sure your fullbacks are committed to the attack to give your team width. So if your midfielders are, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Sebastian Lletget, you need to make sure that Dest and Robinson are pushing up to make sure that you can actually move the ball into the final third. And against Honduras, when we played that way, we were completely pinned back in our own field. So it's I don't think now is the time to fiddle. Like, we saw how easily the team could get back comfortable in a 4-3-3, just playing fluid soccer, just playing the way that they knew how to play in their right positions. Like, please just keep it simple, put the players in their right positions, play a formation where everyone can be suited to their best role, and we should easily be winning. Not easily, but we should be expecting, I expect 9 points out of this window. And I know maybe that's crazy from getting 5 points in the first window, but these first 2 windows are the easiest by far windows that we have, and we need to take points now. We need to take points now. So I know we're kind of getting off on tangents, and I also want to make sure we wrap up with some of these broader thoughts. But if I could just kick us off on this forwards discussion. We're bringing 6 forwards. 2 of them, maybe Gregg sees as an actual number 9 playing centrally. There's very little depth at the wing, which is similar to how we saw him set up for the Gold Cup. I'm just very confused at bringing 27 wingers included. Can you just talk through what you're seeing on the forwards, because maybe I'm missing something?
I mean, I don't think you are. What you're seeing is a mistake by Gregg, and I think it's been kind of beaten to death at this point. But to have someone like Pulisic missing, who's one of those wingers that likes to dribble at people and take people on, and then to leave Conrad off the roster makes no sense. I'm not trying to say that they're like for like, but they fit the same type of profile. And right now, Conrad's been playing very well in Ligue 1. So to leave him off in that role kind of, again, is a head scratcher. Everyone's favorite person to kind of bag on right now too. And I've seen a lot of people talking about, that Sargent didn't deserve to get called in. He hasn't been playing well enough. He's never done anything for the USMNT. I disagree with that. I know he hasn't been banging in a bunch of goals, and that's what we need from number 9s, but he played in the beginning of the season with Werder Bremen as a right winger, and then he's been doing it for Norwich as well, and his coach has been backing him 100% at Norwich as well. So there's something that Sargent does, maybe it's in the locker room, also on the practice field, that makes his coaches endear him. So I think there's more to it. So I really would have liked to see him on this roster as well, because he does add some winger depth and maybe gives us kind of a third 9 as well, even a fourth, because I think Matthew Hoppe should be playing as a 9 too.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
But then you really have four central 9s and 2 wingers. Then if you're seeing it that way,
I think I see players with positional flexibility, and so therefore, Gregg likes to think that he's some sort of guru out there and can tweak these players to perform the way he wants to. I think that to not have those 2 guys specifically, in Conrad and Sargent, on this roster, is, I really hope it doesn't come back to bite us in the ass. You pointed in Gold Cup that we did the same thing, and it came pretty close to being a detrimental mistake. So
we got lucky in the Gold Cup, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it was great to beat our rival and win a trophy, but we're
lucky we didn't go out to Qatar.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for Matt Turner, we lose to Qatar easily in that tournament.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of won in spite of all of our coaching failures. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not even peeved that Zardes or Areola are on this list. It's more just that we don't have more people. Yeah. Like why does Areola deserve to be on this list above Sargent? Why does Matthew Hoppe even or Paul Areola deserve to be on this list over someone that you mentioned in Conrad? But I would even say Nicholas Giacchini is starting to get minutes for Montpellier. He had an assist in his first appearance. So we have other players that can do these things, that have positional flexibility. And again, they're just left off. And I can't for the life of me understand why we're not using all of our roster spots. Why aren't we having camps that have these players in them? It's just baffling to me. I'm just looking at my notes. Go for it.
Okay.
While I look through.
I was talking with a few people about it earlier, and the only logical explanation that I've been given was that, do players really want to fly potentially from Europe to play 5 minutes against Panama? And to
so
me,
what? You play for the US, you play for the country, you play for the badge.
Right. And really what it is to me though, is you want to give these guys an opportunity to compete. As a professional athlete, to not be given an opportunity to compete is the biggest disrespect that you can give a player, to say you're not even good enough to come into camp and compete for a spot.
Yeah.
If we bring these players in and give them an opportunity, I want to see Zardes and Pifak side by side doing the same, the same moves, the same drills, the same competition.
Is a name that we haven't talked about either, but I mean, this is I know people are going to disagree with me, but this is a Champions League forward that's scoring against Manchester United. And
I mean, even the Manchester United one, sure, that was like a gimme, but also too in the Swiss league, he's playing really well too. It's crazy to me that those to me, if you want to like true snubs in this roster, it's Scally, Pifak, Sargent, and Conrad. Those are the four like big ones. And we talked about it. So to go to the bigger roster gives those guys a chance to come in and compete. And that's just what I want to see. Gregg talked about that he wanted to create a culture in which people want to come play for us. We're not going to go try to cap tie young dual nats. We're going to bring guys in because the culture is a place that they want to come play at. Yeah. I think when you're limiting opportunities to compete, you're not creating an environment where people want to come play.
Yeah, completely agree. And I had written in my notes here, I said, no PFOC, and that Gregg in the press conference said he had to manage COVID, travel, and injuries. So if we look at PFOC, he has playing time. He has no COVID restrictions. He does not have any injuries. He's healthy. And he's been playing in all of his games, including tonight against Atlanta. So it's, again, more baffling decisions. And I really hope that even if we win every game, I genuinely don't think that's Gregg proving us wrong. Like, I don't think it's more just that there's so much missed opportunity to be even better. And that's what I want to demand. I expect 7 to 9 points. But even if we do that, I demand that we use all of our roster spots, that we bring in players that are worthy to challenge for these spots. And it's we could easily win every game, and that's great, and I'll be extremely happy. But I just don't think it's the right decision. Personally, everyone can disagree with me, but I just don't agree with using 27 roster spots and then bringing these players that he's bringing over others.
I think that talks to the development of the U.S. soccer fan. It doesn't have to be a binary decision. Like, we can get 9 points out of this window and still be disappointed in, or not necessarily disappointed. We can get 9 points out of this window and still expect more from our coach and more from our players.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tamale Killer said, can you please give us a list of alternatives to Roldan, Leggett, and Areola? So I think we've essentially talked through almost everyone that could do that. But I mean, at least in the midfielder selections, I had Julian Green, Jordi Mihalovic, Caden Clark, Alan Sinora, Paxton Palmacall, all of whom are doing well in their respective leagues. Areola, we just had that discussion, so I'm not going to go through everyone, but essentially Nicholas Giacchini, Conrad, everyone that can play, even Sargent can play as a right winger, and he brings way more to the table than Paul Areola.
Yeah, and
yeah.
like Sargent is one of those like hustle guys, and if you want to talk about having like hustle guys out there, I think Sargent can replace Areola, offer that defensive bite, and you know he's going to get back and work his tail off, but still can offer a little bit more going forward. And you know,
Yeah.
I'm from San Diego, so I want to be a big Areola supporter. I want to see him do well. But at least we've got Luca De La Torre on here, so he's another San Diego guy. So there's one guy that we can definitely expect some offensive bite to.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that sentiment. Is like, if you're bringing in Paul Areola because he brings effort and toughness, that is essentially what Josh Sargent is excellent at. His work rates are immaculate. So, all right. Closing thoughts, Ryan. What's top of your list?
So top of my list is going to be, you know, let's start with a negative and end with a positive. So obviously the negatives are the lack of the size of the roster, the players that we feel like we're missing. It was interesting to see too originally that Pulisic was allegedly going to be out for just 10 days is what we were seeing out of Chelsea, but it's been 23 days at this point. So I would like to just see, you know, maybe some update out of Chelsea's training staff on that. That'd be kind of interesting to see. But the positives, let's end on a high note. It's got to be Chris Richards. So happy to see him in this roster. He deserves it. I think he can definitely take our defense to the next level, even though that has been our strong suit. So adding another cornerstone into that and a guy that can continue to get minutes in the defense from the midfield, for me, the highlight's going to be Luca De La Torre. I think he's one of those players that can move the ball really, really well. And then Timo, you know, having Timo back, I think this could be a window where he gets an opportunity to really shine without having Reyna and Pulisic out there on the wings. We're going to be counting heavily on players like Weah, Hoppy, and Aronson to be the creative spark. That's the one thing that definitely does look like we could be missing. Even if we win 1-0, heck, it's 3 points, but we can expect to see a style of play that's desirable for USMNT fans. We've got the talent to do so. So now it's up to the coach to put the players in the right places. So yeah, highlights there, one from each position. I definitely am happy about part of the roster. It's cool to see some turnover given the injuries we've had.
Yeah.
Now we just got to go out and get the job done.
Absolutely. All right. I have a few, so stop me if I'm taking too long on these, but I won't elaborate a ton. So I think first and foremost, we need to accept that the veteran in this World Cup qualifying cycle is going to be Tim Ream. I think Tim Ream is on this roster not for his defensive abilities, although he can obviously come in and get the job done against CONCACAF opponents, but he is the veteran presence, the glue for everyone on this roster. Similar to what you said about Timothy Weah, I actually think this is also time for Aronson to really stamp his case to be put on the field. I think he was actually starting to do that, not to be able to take off Pulisic or Reyna for him, but essentially saying we need to find a way to put him on the field and have all three of them together. The winger group is ultra thin, and it's the same story as the Gold Cup. I already talked about that. In the forward group, though, one of the things that I want to say is that this really, to me, looks like the backing of Ricardo Pepi. The fact that there's no PFOC, Sargent, or DK, this is really Gregg saying, you know what, I trust this guy. We're going to go with him. and this could potentially be our forward for the next few years. And this is his chance again, similar to Aronson, with no other competition other than Giassi Zardes at the 9. Because I do think Hoppy and Weah are going to play as a winger. This is Pepe's opportunity. Okay, the the questions that I just covered, though, they kind of cover up some really good things about this roster. So I do want to welcome Chris Richards to the group, like you said. Welcome back, Yunus Musa, Luca De La Torre, all people that I'm really excited to see. Personally, I don't think that Gianluca Busio is ready for this group, but it's probably how I see Busio is probably how Gregg sees Joe Scally, that he's just not ready for this type of competition. And then the last point is maybe a negative, but it does look like Julian Araujo is going to Mexico with this roster. And with Gregg in the press conference as well, saying it's up to Julian to make that announcement. It kind of sealed the deal for me, at least.
You can
what's
read
going to happen there. Yeah. So those were my big takeaways. Anything else that came to mind there, Ryan?
No, I think it's just a good call that you pointed out, Musa. I can't believe I missed that, because that's got to be one of the most exciting things, to know that he was in the roster for Nations League and to not get minutes. That was super disappointing. So this is also an opportunity, I think, for Musa to work his way into the squad and definitely stake his claim of, our midfield 3 has got to be Adams, McKennie, and Musa. I think if we can come out of this window with that nailed down, like no questions asked, that those are the 3 guys in the middle, and we get 7 to 9 out of it, then it's a good window.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, guys, that will do it for our roster reaction. I think you'll want to hear what we have to say in our next podcast. If you do want to look at our predictions and see what we got right and what we got wrong in terms of what we wanted to see and what Gregg actually went up with, check out Yanks Go Talking. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever. But it's amazing to have 63 people watching this. It is so cool to have so many comments come in, questions, everything like that. Even if the comments are Gregg sucks, we don't care. You're giving the channel and the video engagement, so thank you. We really appreciate all of the good faith comments as well. And just thank you again for the continued support. I know it's really fun for us to be able to do this. So Ryan, any closing comments, thoughts from you?
No, a couple things. Just Jake, I would echo what you said. I'm up at 11:45 at night. I've got to be up at 6 in the morning for work tomorrow. So to everybody that did stop by, thank you guys so much. Like you really don't understand how much that means to us. So at first I was even messaging Jake before this saying, man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay up. I'm tired. Like, maybe just run this one solo. So to know that even just 63 people chimed in, super cool. Thank you guys so much. And then also too, I'll be heading my way down to Stuttgart this weekend to go see Stuttgart take on Hoffenheim. So I'll get a chance to go see Chris Richards play live this weekend. So I'll try to do my best to check in with the supporter sections from Hoffenheim, see if I can get some at least opinions on how they feel about him. And then if there's anything else that you guys want me to try to ask from anybody there, feel free to hit me up on Twitter.
Nice. Awesome. I just realized that you're wearing a Juventus jersey and I'm wearing a Chelsea jersey, and they went head to head tonight. No.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. So that is it for our thoughts on the roster. And we will see you next time, whether it's on Yanks Go Talking or some other video that might pop up on the channel. And with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful night. We'll see you next time.
Good night.